Hi everyone, I hope you're having a nice weekend. It was really nice to be together on Friday. I thought we had a very good conversation. I hope it has helped put together and assemble much of what we've been exploring in terms of the insights of mindfulness, the practices of mindfulness, and some of the ways that mindfulness practice can lead to meaningful shifts in the ways that we relate to different aspects of our life, personally and professionally. And of course, that's a conversation and exploration that will continue over the course of this semester, and then of course beyond that as well. I wanted to take a little time now to provide you with some direct guidance with regards to a certain aspect of this week's assignment in anticipation of our Friday meeting with Paul Singerman. And please remember that this Friday we will be meeting online, not coming to class. I will miss being with you all in person, but it will allow us to have an opportunity to have, I think, a more direct and easy way of connecting and conversing with Paul Singerman without our masks, and with him being able to be brought into our class in a way that is very effective for purposes of us being able to spend time with him and to learn from him and to share thoughts and ideas with him. Now, there are three specific assignments that really work together. And so I'll just say them now to you briefly so that if you take this part of this video, you'll get from it what you need. This is also provided in writing in terms of the Blackboard assignment. And then toward the end of this recording, I'll provide some guidance and tips beyond. So the three pieces are this. In addition to continuing to practice the open monitoring and the connection or loving kindness practices by listening to them on the app, please set aside time each day, at least once, for 6 minutes. The very first book I wrote for lawyers was known as the 6-Minute Solution. 6 minutes, as you may know, is when billing for time, 0.1, is sort of the smallest increment of time that a lawyer will bill for work done on a client's case. It represents a tenth of an hour or 6 minutes. So the 6-minute solution was meant to suggest we can practice for 6 minutes, and it can be a solution for a variety of things. So each day, set aside 6 minutes, and you can do this spontaneously. It may come to you like, oh, now's a good time. And I'm going to suggest that that will happen to you, that you will notice snow globe, you will notice spiral, or you'll notice moments of clarity with which it's like, now could be a nice time to practice. Set your timer, and whatever timer you might use on your phone or whatever, for 6 minutes. And then practice without any guidance other than guiding yourself. Set the timer, lower or close your eyes. Practice, really, I'm going to suggest, without really making it a deal. Just sit there for 6 minutes and notice and observe. Trust that the practicing we've been doing, the conversations we've been having, the insights you've been observing or noticing or experiencing will come together and allow you to sit for 6 minutes. And then after the 6 minutes is over, the 6 minutes is over. So you can deliberately plan this before or after certain events during the day, or it can be something that spontaneously arises. But each day, to the best of your ability, see if you're able to practice for 6 minutes in this way, and see over the course of the week what it's like, what it offers you. It's really the essence of everything we're exploring. In addition, and this relates, but it looks different, see if you're able to, and in a moment I'm going to remind us of and have us again do the do not interrupt practice, but we're a little bit more informed, we're a little bit more aware. That's not necessarily going to be as rigid a practice, and this piece that I'm about to share with you is the second assignment to do this week, connects up with it. And that is form the intention. What I mean is make a note, write this down, reflect on this as I'm sharing it with you. Think of it later today. To when you're talking with someone, when you're in a conversation, see if you're able to notice when you're about to say something. Now that's very challenging to do because it more often than not just happens. And in the just happening, it could be really fun and useful and wise and compassionate and helpful. And it could be reactive and not helpful and born out of frustration or anger or whatever. If it's going to happen like that, without much awareness, it could move in all sorts of directions, helpful and unhelpful. So what we're interested in doing is seeing if we can, with the intention, which is very helpful, and also with our ongoing practice and becoming increasingly aware and more aware of what it means to be aware, to catch ourselves when we're about to say something in the middle of a conversation. And in that catching ourselves, ask the question, just very quickly, will this be useful? It's just a quick check-in. Will this be useful? Is what I'm about to say going to be useful? And that might mean, is it helpful? Is it kind? Is it supportive? Is it responsive? Is it necessary? And if so, if not, if it seems like it's coming from an agitated place, if it seems like you're trying to tell somebody what to do, if it seems like, it feels like, oh, this is it, I'm disagreeing with somebody just to disagree and it's not really useful, then maybe don't. Just sort of sink back into listening and see what that's like. The most important part of this is not whether you do or don't say something, but rather, can you be aware of the moment when you're about to say something? Aware of the impulse to speak, or aware of whatever it is that we might think of as going on before one just says something, and see what that's like. And if you notice that it's coming from an agitated place, and that's usually a telltale sign. Do you have the patience to wait for the mud to settle, for the snow globe to settle, for the spiral to settle? If what you're going to say is coming from a more steady place, then it's probably a good sign that it's more helpful than not. May still not be necessary, but it's in the spirit of collaboration and being responsive. If it feels like there's a snow globe or a spiral or the mud is going in those moments, and that's what you can feel, that's where the body scan is helpful, even on faith, because you might not think, oh, this won't be helpful, but you can sort of feel this might not be helpful. It's almost like it's effortful. It's almost like it's engaging, going against the current. It's, there's a resistance. There's sort of a fighting to get the words out or to get the words in. Give yourself a break. And then notice what that's like. So that's the second practice. It's one that's intended to be applicable throughout the week. And it's not suggesting that you don't interrupt or whatever. It's just saying, let's be more aware. Let's see if we can form the intention to, and at this stage in our semester, be more aware. And of course, what you'll realize with that intention is how often you just forget. And that's part of what we're observing. It's almost like saying, rest your attention on the sensations of the breath. And when you notice your mind wandering, which you will, it's like rest your attention on the sensations of, on the experience of interacting with another. And when you realize that you've just interrupted or just said something without having been aware, to notice, to pay attention, and then to continue to listen. All right. And the third practice is, yes, let's once again, at least one day, form the intention to not interrupt. This is related a little bit, but it's different. than the second practice that I just shared with you. This one's more a don't interrupt and notice what that's like. Okay, so perhaps, and because we've talked about that before, I'm not going to elaborate much on that now. This is what we'll be talking about with Paul Singerman. Paul Singerman will be interested in sharing with you the do not interrupt practice and your experience this week with it. So, 3 practices. If it's not already apparent to you, they're very related, right? They almost like are very free-formed to a little bit less free-formed to less free-formed. Free-form meaning being open and, without much instruction. We begin just saying sit each day, in addition to the other practices you're doing as the open monitoring and loving kindness practices that you're alternating. Just find 6 minutes, sit, set the timer, and just be a witness of those 6 minutes. In conversation with somebody else, be aware. While in conversation, keep an eye on that about to say something, and then just drop the question, is this useful? And if so, and if not, perhaps don't say it, but most importantly, be aware of that process. And then the third is the more sort of instruction-based, rigid, do not interrupt for a day. See what that's like. Carry that intention for the day. See what that's like. And notice or observe. All right. I hope that is helpful to you in developing a little bit more further what these 3 assignments are all about and how they might interrelate. And I'm interested for you this week seeing how they in fact interrelate. And now that's the end of this instruction proper. And now I'll share with you some tips as it relates to it. So if you're interested in staying on for this part, terrific. If not, not necessary. The first one, when we sit and practice, listening to a guided practice, we're guided by someone else, right? Perhaps my voice on the guided practices that you've been listening to. Could be focused attention, could be body scan, could be open monitoring, could be loving kindness. They all carry with it the fact that you're sitting and you're paying attention. And you're paying attention in a particular way. And so here you are for these 6 minutes doing the exact same thing. And maybe you'll decide in those 6 minutes to do a focused attention practice where you'll rest your attention on the sensations of an object like the breath and bring your attention back. Or maybe you'll gently scan through parts of the body and notice the sensations and whether they're pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, and then continue on through the body. Or maybe you'll sort of open up and just be interested in what's coming and going in the sensory field of sights and sounds and taste and touch and smell and thoughts and feelings, just sort of coming and going as you're a witness. Or maybe you'll choose to wish kindness for yourself or someone else. So it's whatever you make of it, and it'll maybe come to you, but you can keep it simple. You can just say, I don't know what I'm going to do. Let me just lower or close my eyes for 6 minutes and be a witness for my experience for 6 minutes. Or you could say, I've got some of these different practices, and maybe my mind is a little bit busy, so maybe I'll do the focused attention practice. Or I'm a little bit upset or agitated with other people or with some circumstance, maybe I'll do the loving kindness practice. Or maybe I feel very sort of rigidly stuck, and I'll do that open monitoring practice. So you can pick and choose, or you could just sit there and be present. Keep it simple. The second practice, and I might add, and of course those practices will be in really a rich form of solitude, right? The input will be your own input, the input of your own mind. With regards to the second practice of being aware of before saying something in a conversation, I think you'll find this to be fascinating, because if you're like me, you'll just forget. You'll keep forgetting. You'll fall back into automatic pilot. And it's really fascinating to see that happen, to say, you're talking to somebody and say, oh, okay, good, this is the time that I'll be aware. Can I catch myself before I start to talk? It's a much larger enterprise, by the way. Can you notice before you start to move your body? Can you notice when you're about to eat before you take that first bite. I mean, it's like, can I bring awareness more fully to the moments of my life? And that's really what everything we're doing is in the service of. So here we're sort of bringing it into a very narrow aspect of our experience or of our day when we're actually talking with somebody. And we remember this invitation. Can I be aware I'm about to say something? And you see, what happens is that we're so used to just engaging in conversation in a very automatic pilot, habitual way that what emerges, as you know, can be lots of fun and excitement and playful and really terrific and supportive. And it could also be like, you know, you just said the thing that you're like, why did I say that again? Or you're just, you know, the person says something and then you say something, and before you know it, you're sort of unhappy with each other or unhappy with yourself or unhappy with them or whatever it may be. And it's like, it all starts sort of similarly and then it sort of moves off in different directions. And what we're interested in doing is sort of like catching it at that moment with the simple question, is this useful? Is this useful? And I think that you'll find it to be fascinating. Try not to get frustrated by it. You will, just like the mind will wander often and you won't know it until you finally realize it, you will be in not catching yourself again and again and again. And part of this practice is that you become more likely to catch yourself. And think about how useful that might be when somebody's talking to you and you're about to say something which is disagreeing with them, even though they're just sharing with you some story. And they didn't say, do you agree or disagree? You're just responding to something that's not even in the room, if you will. We can talk more about that in class. You just are almost hearing a question that's being asked by the person that they're not even asking, and you're answering it. So there's a disconnect that comes from that. And it can be really interesting to, in time, become increasingly skillful at noticing the moments that we're about to say something and to be able to be more skillful. And I'll suggest to you in time what this leads to is this. Almost always there is an agitation that is impelling this unhelpful way of responding or reacting. And when we're in a steadier state, when the snow globe is just beautifully, you know, just like the way a beautiful snow globe is, or the spiral is, you know, it's just a very steady spiral, or however you might want to construe that, it's spontaneous and it's effortless and it's satisfying the way we're interacting with each other and even ourselves. Ultimately, this comes back to even the ways that we are interacting with ourselves. And you can think about the critical self-judgment versus the kind ways that we reflect on our own nature, very similar to the way we're interacting with others. And so you begin to more naturally and spontaneously realize, oh, there's an agitation, and you settle back in. Or you have it where there's not an agitation, and you just more naturally, and I would suggest to you that in time, you will find your interactions with others and ultimately yourself to be much, much more satisfying and effortless in this regard. And then the third practice is this do not interrupt. And that's where what we've explored is you hold that intention, and that's like what Paul Singer will talk about, this white knuckling it if you have to. Do not interrupt, and really pay attention to and notice what it is that's taking place that's really impelling this impulse or this desire to interrupt. And that's, of course, where, again, focused attention, we notice all these thoughts that are going on, and we come back to the person talking. So it's a focused attention practice in that way. Or we notice the sensations in the body, and we come back to the person talking, and it has a body scan quality in that way. Or we're attending to the person, and we're just aware of all this stuff, thoughts, feelings, sensations, you know, the person talking, you know, and it's like an open monitoring practice in ways. Or maybe we even have it where while they're talking and you feel the desire to interrupt, you wish them happiness or kindness or safety, or you offer that to yourself because you're so agitated. And so we see how even in this practice of not interrupting, the various practices and ways of being that we've been exploring just naturally are apart. And that can happen spontaneously and effortlessly. And at this stage, we're inclined to be practicing it deliberately so that it can be helpful in those moments, and also it can begin to arise more spontaneously in time. All right, I hope this has been helpful. I hope you have a wonderful week. Looking forward to seeing you on Zoom. You'll get a link that's sent to you where we'll spend time with Paul Singerman and attend to some of the other aspects of our various assignments. And I'm looking forward to, as you are working more on your outlines for your papers, to begin to explore that as well. And that information is on the Blackboard. All right, take care.